We're going to the moon. With NASA's Artemis campaign, we will explore the moon in new ways, travel vast distances, and discover more than ever before, all while learning how to live and work on another celestial body. A next-generation lunar terrain vehicle will take us to places never visited by astronauts. Harsh landscape, extreme cold, and limited sunlight at the moon's south pole demand a truly off-road and off-planet vehicle. It will let us conduct science and locate new resources, and that will help us go deeper into our solar system. We're building on over 5 decades of experience, and this time it will operate with or without astronauts on board, enabling continuous exploration and science on the lunar surface. We're sending a robust vehicle that can stand up to the challenges of the moon's south pole. For new discoveries, for places never explored, for the benefit of all. Welcome to the Artemis Generation's Lunar Terrain Vehicle.
Good afternoon and welcome to NASA's Johnson Space Center here in Houston, Texas. I'm Victoria Ugaldi. Today we have an exciting announcement to reveal the companies selected to move forward in developing the Lunar Terrain Vehicle, which will allow astronauts to explore more of the lunar surface during Artemis missions. We have some panelists here today who will be providing remarks and answering some questions regarding the new award. With us today we have Vanessa Wyche, Director of the Johnson Space Center, Jacob Bleacher, Chief Exploration Scientist at NASA headquarters in Washington, D.C., Lara Kearney, Manager of the Extravehicular Activity and Human Surface Mobility Program here at the Johnson Space Center. We also have representatives of the awarded companies to provide remarks and address questions, but I will give the honors to Vanessa for announcing the selected companies. We'll first start with some initial remarks from each of our briefers before opening it up for questions. We'll be taking questions on our phone bridge as well as from here in the room. If you're here in the room, just raise your hand and we will get a microphone over to you. For those on our phone bridge, please press *1 to enter into our queue. And with that, I will hand it over to Vanessa for opening remarks.
Thank you. Thank you, Victoria. Good afternoon. NASA's Johnson Space Center is proud to continue exploration via NASA's Artemis Moon to Mars program. As the home to mission operations, astronaut training, human spacecraft development, systems integration, and program management of our premier NASA programs, I am pleased to talk about the accomplishments that happen here every day. At the Johnson Space Center, we are very proud of managing the International Space Station, where we are operating and conducting science 365 days of the year, and it not only benefits Earth, but it also is helping us with our exploration goals. Through the Artemis program, we will witness our nation's return to the lunar surface, this time establishing a sustainable human presence on the moon in preparation for missions to Mars. Building on commercial collaboration that started in low Earth orbit, we're fostering a commercial space economy with private sector and international partners. In view of this, I am pleased to announce, after a very thorough and rigorous procurement process, NASA is selecting 3 awardees to provide lunar terrain vehicle services. The awardees are Intuitive Machines, represented by Steve Artemis, CEO and co-founder, Lunar Outposts, represented by Justin Cyrus, CEO and founder, and Venturi Astrolab, represented by Jared Matthews, CEO and founder. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
This capability is being added to the other Artemis elements. The excitement here is tremendous as we are training our Artemis II crew for an upcoming test flight to the lunar vicinity next year. These will be the first humans to venture to deep space since 1972, at the close of the Apollo era. They will board an Orion spacecraft on top of a Space Launch System rocket and be launched from a mobile launch platform at Kennedy Space Center. Our astronauts, engineering, operations, and health and medical teams are working with other commercial and international partners on vehicle and systems that will support sustainable lunar missions. Johnson Space Center is proud to lead other critical elements of the Artemis architecture, including commercial lunar payload services that provides robotic exploration activities, Gateway, which is humanity's first space station around the moon, as well as our exploration-capable, commercially provided spacesuits. In support of future Artemis missions, Gateway will play a key role in helping NASA and its partners learn how to live sustainably on another body. The Orion spacecraft will dock with the Gateway, and our astronauts will perform crew-tended operations while preparing for surface operations via commercially developed human landing systems. As astronauts explore the South Pole region of the moon during our Artemis missions, they'll be able to go farther and conduct more science than ever before, thanks to the Lunar Terrain Vehicle. Think of a hybrid of the Apollo-style lunar rover that was driven by our astronauts and an uncrewed mobile science platform. This will give the crew the capability to travel a distance much further from their landing sites. In addition, during uncrewed operations, the LTV will provide autonomous operations for science and technology. NASA and the Johnson Space Center workforce will continue to work closely with Intuitive Machines, Lunar Outpost, and Astrolab as they build the LTV, providing insight throughout the development and ensuring that the system is safe for our astronauts. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Vanessa. I'll now hand it over to Jake.
Thank you, and thank you for having us, Vanessa. This truly is a exciting moment as we're looking to the moon and continue to take steps with Artemis to build a blueprint for exploring space. I would like to congratulate Astrolab, Intuitive Machines, and Lunar Outpost for bringing forward your innovative and creative solutions that will provide new opportunity for exploration of the moon. I'd also like to congratulate Lara and her team. I know they spent a lot of hard work, a lot of time and hard work to reach this point. Now, I would like to take a moment to ensure that we all recognize the importance of this announcement. If you'll indulge me for a moment, let's take a step back in our memory and try to remember a time when you were a child. Most likely, your world was as large as the range that you could move under your own power at that time. Now try to remember how it felt when you first gained the ability to move beyond the boundaries of that world. For me, that involved learning to ride a bike. Maybe for you, it was something different. Roller skates, roller blades, skateboard. Maybe it was a wheelchair, or maybe it was even access to public transit for the first time. Regardless of your technical solution, you could now reach places that were previously off limits to you. Enhanced mobility fundamentally changes one's world. It changes where you can go, it changes what you can do. Quite simply, it changes what you can learn. Science is our toolbox for learning, and enhanced mobility is one of the most important tools in that science toolbox. Science itself is one of our fundamental reasons that we're going to the moon. Science will help us learn about the moon, about how we survive in space, and that will help us build that blueprint for exploring away from the Earth. The moon is a treasure chest of science that can unlock the secrets of our solar system and teach us more about our home planet for the benefit of all. The lunar samples returned from the Apollo program dramatically changed our view of the solar system, our place in its evolution. And scientists continue to this day to unlock new insights from those samples. The diversity of Apollo samples increased when the Lunar Roving Vehicle enabled exploration of more surface area per mission. That diversity of lunar knowledge is what we seek now. Observations from previous robotic explorers in space and even an impact mission on the surface have proven that permanently shadowed regions on the moon, including some craters in the South Polar region, contain frozen water. Yet we are only scratching the surface of knowledge that the moon has to offer us. Future samples from Artemis missions will increase that diversity of our knowledge about the moon. The discovery of water on the moon holds promise for both science and human exploration. NASA wants to understand how much water exists below the surface and whether or not we can access it. Better understanding of the sources and concentrations of this water will help teach us how the moon formed and evolved, and may provide resources for our future explorers. Under Artemis, NASA is sending robots and astronauts to explore more of the moon than ever before, including the lunar South Pole, where no humans have ever been. Crews will use the LTV to explore. They will transport scientific equipment, and they will collect samples from the lunar surface from much farther than they could if they were on foot alone. This will enable us to learn more science as we go. With the addition of the LTV, we are combining the best of human and robotic exploration. Between the Artemis missions, when our astronauts are not on the moon, NASA can use the LTV's remote operation capabilities to continue exploring. It means also that we'll be able to operate the LTV to meet our crew when they arrive on the surface. That means they'll be ready to go right away to focus on all the exploration that benefits the most from having our astronauts there. And then after the crew leave, the LTV can continue remote operations for additional exploration, prospecting, science, similar to robotic explorers that we have on Mars right now. This can help us identify priorities for our next crewed missions. With NASA's Artemis campaign, we are building up the capabilities needed to establish a longer-term exploration and presence of the moon. And the LTV is one of those capabilities that will enable us to conduct more science as we explore. As we will learn to live farther away from home for longer periods of time than ever before, we will build the first long-term presence on the moon and inspire a whole new generation of scientists, engineers, astronauts, artists, and everything else. Mars remains a horizon goal, and what we learn here on the moon, both with our operations and how to interpret the science, that will help us when we're ready to take that next giant leap to Mars. Now, I like to imagine the views and the vistas that the LTV will enable us to see from the surface of the moon. This truly is an exciting next step in exploration. The LTV is truly an exploration vehicle. Where it will go, there are no roads. Its mobility will fundamentally change our view of the moon. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacob. And now we'll go to Lara Kearney.
Thank you, Victoria. So really excited to be here today. As was mentioned, our NASA team has been working really hard to get to this point. Started a couple of years back. It took us a little while to really understand the requirements for this vehicle and what it meant to ask a vehicle to operate on the moon in the lunar South Pole region, full-time, 24/7, 365 for up to 10 years. So we wanted to make sure we were really getting the requirements set right when we put this request for proposal out. We also wanted to make sure we truly understood our acquisition strategy. As was mentioned, we want to make sure we are pushing the commercial industry forward and making sure we are establishing a robust lunar economy on the moon. So it took us a little while to make sure we understood what that requirement set was. Once we got the RFP out, our procurement team really kicked in, and they have worked really hard for the last year maintaining the schedule so that we could be here where we are today. So I am really excited to have the three gentlemen sitting here to my left. We've been waiting to this point where we can start engaging them as a program going forward. So a little bit about the EVA and Human Surface Mobility Program. We are charged with delivering and integrating the EVA spacesuits that will be used to walk on the lunar surface, the LTV that we are here to award today, and the pressurized rover. Together, these three elements will provide the first surface elements for the astronauts in the early Artemis missions. So we have a responsibility not only to deliver these elements on cost and on schedule, but to make sure they are integrated well and meeting all of the objectives of the Artemis enterprise as well as of our science community. So again, we're very excited now that we have these companies and these teams on board, we can better understand what their designs are and how they integrate into the infrastructure that we are charged to support for the Artemis enterprise. A bit about the structure of the contract. It is what we call a service contract. So we have asked these companies not only to design, develop, and deliver a lunar terrain vehicle, but to also get that vehicle to the moon. So as part of their proposals, they propose not only the design of the LTV, but also how they launch it and how they will land it on the lunar surface. Each of their contracts will include that full scope, but they are not actually authorized to do the work until we have put a task order in place. And so by doing this, we will have competitive task orders throughout the life of the contract that ensures we maintain robust competition, we continue to get innovation, and we get the best value for the government and long-term commercial economy. So how we do that at the beginning is we have what we call a feasibility phase. It's a task order that each of these companies will get. It's about 12 months, in duration, and leads up to the preliminary design review. And so during that time, our NASA teams will be working with them to understand what their designs look like, iterating with them on where we can make improvements, and understanding how they incorporate into our overall lunar architecture. Once we get past that point, we will have a follow-on subsequent competitive request for proposal go out. They will then compete for what we call a demonstration task order. That demonstration allows them to finish the development, get the LTV to the moon, and demonstrate it on the surface prior to the arrival of the Artemis 5 crew. We anticipate only being able to award that demonstration task order to one of these companies. Once that demonstration is complete, we'll then move on to what we call service task orders, and that will be an annual cadence where we will work with our Artemis enterprise customers as well as our science customers, and on an annual basis, we will award a service contract for them to provide both crewed and uncrewed services throughout the remaining life of the contract. So again, we are really, really excited. Our congratulations to the three companies from our team. We are looking forward to jumping in with you guys and certainly making LTV a big success.
Thank you, Laura. We will now hear remarks from each of the selected companies in alphabetical order, starting with Steve Altemus of Intuitive Machines. Steve?
Thank you very much. Welcome, everybody. I'm so excited to be here and receive this award on behalf of our Moon Racer team, which is the reusable, let me write this down here. It's the Reusable Autonomous Crewed Exploration Rover Team. Our team is made up of AVL, Boeing, Michelin, Northrop Grumman, with Intuitive Machines as a prime. So we're very excited. I remember about a month ago, I was in this room at a press conference celebrating a successful soft landing on the moon. And this next step, this LTV award, is just an exciting next step to put the most critical piece, or the first critical piece of infrastructure on the surface. We're going to need this world-class team to do that because, as you saw in the video, the environment on the moon is harsh. You know, we have 500-degree temperature swings. The South Pole region is rocky and craggy and shadowed. It's going to stress our suspension, our drivetrain, our power systems, and our autonomous driving algorithms and software. And we're going to need this globally integrated team to pull that off, to allow this rover to live for 10 years and provide the service that NASA is asking for. I think what's really important also is to applaud NASA for this non-traditional, forward-thinking procurement. It really is exciting that not only are we going to support the Artemis campaign with crewed missions and uncrewed missions, but also it's commercially available for us as a commercial business to sell capacity on that rover and do that for international partners and for other commercial companies and space agencies around the world. So this is another first, this LTV contract in a burgeoning cislunar economy. And I'm really happy to represent our Moon Racer team and to be here and appreciate NASA's award. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Steve. Next up is Justin Cyrus with Lunar Outpost.
Hi, my name's Justin Cyrus, and I'm the CEO and founder at Lunar Outpost. For those of you who don't know who we are, Lunar Outpost is the leading mobility provider in the world. We have 4 rovers that are headed to the lunar surface. First one this year, later as a part of the IM-2 mission. Shortly after, we'll be a part of the IM-3 mission going to Reiner Gamma, and a commercial mission to follow, and an international collaboration from there as part of the Australian Space Agency's Trailblazer program. So I'm honored to be here representing our company, but also our amazing team. So our team consists of Lockheed Martin, General Motors, MDA Space, and Goodyear, who are all providing critical components of this overall contract. Now, our team combines proven human and robotic heritage, which is extraordinarily difficult to come by, and we're very fortunate to have as a part of our group. And what we're doing is taking not only this space heritage, but we're taking cutting-edge technology and automotive industry strengths to provide a true off-road vehicle capable of allowing us to live and work on the surface of the moon. With a strong focus on commercialization and enabling the new cislunar economy, our team is well positioned to help NASA take the next leap. As a part of the Artemis campaign, our LTV design emphasizes astronaut safety, alongside groundbreaking new capabilities that enable new mission profiles, including notably enhanced science mission returns, alongside building and maintaining infrastructure on the surface of the moon. I am truly humbled to be here on stage at Johnson Space Center, where as a kid, I grew up right down the street, watching the people of this center and watching the people of NASA continue to constantly push boundaries and explore new horizons. And that spirit of constantly pushing, improving, and exploring is what's led me to be here on this stage today. So first of all, thank you for that inspiration, and I really hope I am able to be a part of this program and inspire the next generation. Now, I do also want to thank NASA and Johnson Space Center for letting us have the opportunity to get humanity back to the moon and on to Mars, hopefully this time to stay. And I will do my best, and our team will do our best to make the most of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Justin. We'll now hear from Jarrett Matthews of Venturi Astrolab. Jarrett.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us today. Astrolab is on a mission to move humanity forward by building and operating a fleet of multi-purpose planetary rovers for transporting crew, supporting science and exploration, and robotic cargo logistics on the moon and eventually Mars. First, I would like to express my deep gratitude to NASA for giving us this opportunity to work alongside you on the LTVS project, and to the Astrolab team for working so hard for years on the LTV design and for putting together such a strong proposal. The Astrolab team is comprised of many incredible individuals with decades of experience in human spaceflight, mobility, and planetary robotics, and I'm so proud of them today. I would also like to thank our LTVS team members, Axiom Space and Odyssey Space Research, who are bringing to the team their deep experience in crew interfaces, crew training, flight software, simulation, safety and mission assurance, and mission operations. And finally, our strategic partners at Venturi, who are bringing their cutting-edge advancements in electric mobility, energy storage, and lunar tire design. Astrolab has been working for over 4 years on our commercial platform called the Flexible Logistics and Exploration Rover, or FLEX. FLEX is designed to operate on the moon for years and is purpose-built to help establish a permanent human presence on the moon and to serve as a catalyst for the lunar economy. The first commercial version of FLEX is scheduled to land on the moon in late 2026 with up to 1.5 tons of commercial cargo. The mission will allow us to validate our strong commercial model prior to sending the Flex LTV for NASA's Artemis campaign. Everything NASA has ever accomplished has been because they can assemble great teams, and that's exactly what we've done at Astrolab. So on behalf of everyone involved with our team, we are honored, humbled, and so very much looking forward to working with NASA to deliver the most capable and versatile rover the world has ever seen. Thank you.
All right, and thank you to all of our briefers for those initial remarks. We'll now move on to the question and answer portion of today's news briefing. For all media, both here in the room and on our phone bridge, please remember to state your name, affiliation, and to whom you'd like to direct your question to. And with that, and for those who are in the room, just raise your hand. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started.
Hi, Eric Berger with Ars Technica. Thanks for doing this. Question for Laura. You talked about a 12-month feasibility phase, and then there's going to be a competitive RFP. I just want to understand how you're going to maintain competition, but also it sounds like there's just going to be one team building one rover, LTV, that actually gets to the moon for this program. And so at what point do you cut from 3 to 1, and how long does that last? It seems like it's going to be a fairly brief competition in that sense.
The current plan, again, a lot of it is based on available budget. And so right now the intent is to just run this feasibility phase through the 12 months, as I mentioned, and at that point, one demonstration. But that said, this contract mechanism is extraordinarily flexible. We can bring task orders onto this mechanism at any time. So depending if another use comes in, we can certainly turn on another task order for another development or service effort. We also have an on-ramp clause that allows other companies to come onto this contract in the future should they have capability. So really it is a matter of objectives, requirements. If we have customers that come with additional funding, we have a contract mechanism that will allow companies to continue to compete for future demonstrations and service periods.
Okay, thank you for that question. And just as a reminder for those on our phone bridge, please press 1 to enter into our queue. And if you found that your question has already been answered, please press star 2 to withdraw it at any time. And with that, we'll take another question here in the room.
Oh, thank you. Mark Carreau with Aviation Week and Space Technology. I have a kind of a few technical questions. And I don't know whether you've specified this yet, but if you could explain how these guys are supposed to be powered, what their range could be, and then maybe you could just describe the kind of environment at the lunar South Pole that these will be experiencing in terms of thermal and maybe radiation and other major factors. Thank you.
And perhaps I could start with high-level requirements, and then you gentlemen certainly can jump in. We tried very hard in this requirement set to not be too dictative. We wanted to give just high-level functional requirements, but with an understanding of what the environment is. One of the big challenges at the lunar South Pole is power, given that we are in shadow quite often. So the NASA team had done a lot of analysis to try to understand how we would navigate to an area where we could get to areas where the sun can get to the rover, and we can at least have some kind of power that way. We had derived a certain number of hours, a minimum number of hours that we put on this contract. But we did not limit and we did not define how these systems had to be powered. So they were able to provide innovative solutions and certainly able to provide what I would call excess capacity. If they could, for instance, meet 150 hours and it allows us to stay in darkness longer, that just provides more operational flexibility for us. So that is absolutely one of the driving requirements. As far as thermal, it was mentioned we can swing hundreds of degrees one way or another once, beyond being in the sun to being in the shaded area. Radiation is a big one, to be able to keep electronics alive in that environment. We have asked the companies to meet a 10-year operating life. We did not define how they needed to do that. I use polar examples just to prove a point. They could, for instance, come in and say, I'm going to deliver one rover, it's going to last 10 years, or I'm going to deliver 10 rovers that only last 1 year. And that way they have the trade space to say, maybe I can fly COTS electronics, but I'm going to have to replace them once a year. Or I have to be extraordinarily robust because I'm going to last 10 years. Those are bounding cases. None of them proposed either of those. But we wanted to be able to give them, again, these high-level requirements, and then they could innovate on how they wanted to solve those problems.
I'm happy to hop in. So our company and our team more broadly has some pretty cool technology around this. It's a big part of what we're actually figuring out over the course of our first 4 rover missions to the lunar surface, basically how to squeeze every last watt of power out of these battery systems and conserve that energy for as long as we can. So on our first rover mission, we're just lasting the lunar day, which is a much easier challenge to solve than what we're doing here as a part of LTVS. Second rover mission, all right, now you can start looking at potentially lasting a couple lunar nights. By the time you get to the third and fourth rover missions, then we're looking at operating months at a time, all the way up to years at a time, depending on how those technologies are tested. Another member of our team that we're extraordinarily excited to have is GM. So that's something that they are providing as a part of this overall LTVS program, is their new battery technology that comes with much higher energy density that can survive the extremes of the lunar surface. Of course, with a little bit of modification, but it's truly amazing energy storage technology that we're very proud to be bringing into the Artemis program. So our team over at GM will be providing our battery technology, and then Lockheed Martin and Lunar Outpost will basically be figuring out how to make the most of that technology moving forward, so we can not only survive the lunar night, but truly operate for many years at a time during the lunar day and lunar night.
All right, thank you. Before we go to our phone bridge, we'll take one more question here in the room.
Hi, Beverly Casillas for Space Scout. And I guess this one's also for Laura. What kinds of knowledge and resources is NASA sharing with these providers to kind of help accelerate the development of their concepts? We've seen, like with XEVAs, NASA provided things like the XEMU data, as well as resources like the Argo system to help with testing in gravity environments. Could you provide any information about what kind of resources EHP is providing? Thank you.
Yes, we are using a very similar model to what we had on, we call it XEVAS. It's the EVA acquisition. We've had a lunar LTV team working within our engineering directorate here at Johnson Space Center for quite some time, building prototypes, understanding requirements, trying to get an idea of what these systems might look like. And we make all of that data available to these companies in a technical library for them to use and learn from and leverage from. So all that data is available. As we execute this contract, we will have a NASA, what we call Insight team, which will work side by side with these companies, again, providing lessons learned and information back and forth. And then also similar to our EVA contract, we will utilize what we call government task agreements. And so as part of their proposals, they actually provided, we gave them information on what kinds of assets, whether it be a testing facility, materials, certain knowledge that we have here at the Johnson Space Center, and actually all centers across the agency. We made that available to them so that they could then propose back to us where they would like to use those capabilities as part of their overall proposal. So certainly Johnson Space Center here has a lot of facility capability, zero gravity or lunar gravity offloading systems that we anticipate them to use. We have some virtual simulation capabilities we anticipate them to use. And then, of course, this is where we will be bringing the spacesuits in and integrating the human element along with our crews and our engineering test subjects. And so all that capability is being made available to them as they go through the development process.
Yeah, I'd answer that too. For Intuitive Machines in our team, we've made extensive use of the GTA process that NASA offered across multiple centers, and whether that's Ames Research Center for autonomous driving, path planning, They have some great algorithms that do that, whether it's Goddard Space Flight Center for communications, or whether it's Johnson Space Center for the Argos gravity offload system. So there's quite a bit of capability in the agency, which we plan to leverage. That was part of our proposal and priced accordingly. So this is really going to be a government and private sector partnership that builds this LTV and delivers it to the surface.
We've actually been testing our lunar tire prototype here at Johnson Space Center for the last year, as well as at NASA Glenn through the NASA Announcement of Collaborative Opportunity program. So separate from LTV, but that technology is going to be applied to LTV.
All right, thank you. And just as a reminder, if you are online on our phone bridge, please press *1 to enter into the queue to ask your question. And with that, we will go to Jeff Faust with Space News.
Good afternoon. A couple of quick questions for Lara Kearney. What is the dollar value of these initial task orders the three companies are getting? And then also, how many proposals did NASA receive for the solicitation? Thanks.
I think I am probably going to have to pass on both of those since we are technically still in a blackout period with these companies. So once that blackout period is over and source selection statements are released, I think that some of that information at least will be available to you.
All right, thank you, Laura. We'll take another question on our phone bridge. Kenneth Chang with the New York Times.
Hi, thank you. So the question is, how much time will there be for other customers to use the LTV, and how does the coordination go between NASA and the commercial customer if NASA needs the rover at a certain place for the next Artemis mission?
So we thought about that a lot, actually, and how we developed this RFP. We had to really strategize on different models for how we might establish those agreements. We understand, at least, we believe, in the early phase, NASA is going to have to be somewhat of an anchor tenant. And then we hope that over the 10-year operating life of this vehicle, we can start bringing in more and more and more commercial requests as the market evolves. So as I mentioned, we will have these one-year service periods. And we started a model where the first service periods tend to be more NASA requirement driven. So NASA, either through our science requirements or our exploration requirements, will carry about 75% of the burden or so, freeing up about 25% of the capacity for other commercial uses. We have other mechanisms on the contract where, as we go over time and NASA perhaps becomes less and less of a user, we can open up more and more of that capacity for the commercial space. We also put processes on the contract where we have science and utilization teams that come in and they help us understand what their objectives are. We have joint agreements with the companies where we can get together and say, over the course of this next year, these are what our objectives are. This is the mission that we want to meet. And NASA ultimately, even though this is a commercial service, especially when it comes to crewed missions and crew safety is paramount, NASA still has mission authority and risk acceptance over how this vehicle is operated on the lunar surface. So we have set up, through the contract structure, a lot of that I would call governance and authority infrastructure to make sure that we are collaborating with the vendor both on mission objectives and on crew safety and vehicle reliability.
And if I may, we're really excited about NASA's services approach. That allows companies like ours and like the others on stage here today to start bringing more people into the cislunar economy. Something that not widely talked about. We're not a public company, so we don't have to disclose this, but we're actually a majority commercial revenue company. As a space company that's called Lunar Outpost, right? That doesn't exist 10 years ago. That doesn't exist 15 years ago. But through these new opportunities that NASA is providing to companies like ours, we are able to bring in those non-traditional space customers, international space agencies that are part of the Artemis Accords, and also a new block of new space companies that are helping drive value in the ecosystem. So it's been really exciting. 2 out of our first 4 missions are actually fully commercial, where one is NASA and then the 4th one is an international space agency. So we're really looking forward to trying to scale that as part of the LTVS program, and we're very excited about the opportunity to bring some more people into the overall ecosystem.
All right, thank you, Justin. We'll now take another question on our phone bridge. Bill Harwood with CBS News.
Yes, thank you very much. I just wanted to follow up on Mark Carreau's question earlier, trying to get a general sense of some of the at least aspirational goals each company has. For example, I mean, what kind of ranges are we talking about? I realize you don't have a solid answer to that yet, but maybe can you bound it for us at least? I assume all 3 are solar powered. Are you envisioning solar panels on the vehicle for recharging or some kind of charging station? And maybe anything you can tell us about tire technology. We're all familiar with Apollo 17 and the kind of wheels they had back then, but what are we looking at now? And I realize you don't have specifics perhaps for us, but just give us some general ideas of what you're looking at. Thanks.
Well, let me interject here, Bill. A lot of this is competitive, right? So what we did was we crafted feasible existence proof of a design to meet the RFP requirements. We are going to go through a year-long process now to get to what Lara said was essentially a PDR design for the delivery to the South Pole and also for the demonstration mission for that LTV. There's a number of the subsystems that we've put in as the initial design that will be traded over that 12-month period that will give us a better understanding of things like survive the night, operate during the night, how effective solar arrays are versus fuel cells, what the drivetrain needs to look like, what the battery life extensions are, what the suspension needs to be, and tires in particular. We've brought Michelin on board, who's done extensive work on lunar tires with the Glenn Research Center, and so that research has been going on for years. And so a lot of this work we have answers to, even our sparing strategies that will allow us to extend the range and gain greater and greater capability out of this LTV as we learn about it and refine the design. And that's what this first design development season of 12 months is all about. So I don't want to give you specific numbers because we will work as hard as we can to exceed the requirements that the government has asked us to do. Because it's in our best interest as a commercial business to have more capability to provide to commercial and international partners.
Yeah, I mean, as Steve said, it's a competition, so holding the numbers a little bit close, but I can say Goodyear Tire Technology, absolutely awesome. I'm really excited to see how they can bring some of the technology that we're using as a part of LTVS back down here to Earth. I want a set of those tires for my own off-road vehicle, but hopefully you'll see some cool pictures. And I do think we have them in our render as well, so happy to share that publicly. But the tire technology truly is a step forward for exploring other planetary bodies.
Yeah, and I'll just say, at Astrolab, we're a very hardware-rich, iterative design approach kind of company, and we built a full-scale, fully functional terrestrial prototype over 2 years ago now and have been doing thousands of hours of testing in the field with it. We frequently take it out to the Death Valley area in California, and that has allowed us to stress the hardware and actually try out our tire prototypes in the real-world environment, as well as in our environmental chambers that we have at our company. And so our tire technology has actually already been in thermal vacuum chambers. It's currently on an endurance test rig at NASA Glenn. And so we're coming into this with a lot of experience already with the technologies we're planning to apply here. Like my colleagues here, or the others on the stage here, we intend to exceed NASA's requirements. I can tell you, some of those requirements are that it travel 15 kilometers an hour, that it be able to traverse 20 kilometers in a charge, and be able to support a full 8-hour EVA. So all those are the base level requirements, and again, it's our intention to exceed those by quite a lot in most instances.
All right, thank you, Jarrett. We'll now take another question here in the room.
Hi, this is Eric Berger again. Question for either Jacob or Laura. I just want to get a sense from you of whether you think the commercial space industry is ready to step up to this challenge. I mean, the initial lunar rovers, from Apollo lasted for a few days, and now you're asking for something to last for 10 years in a very harsh environment, harsher than where the Apollo missions were. And so it's like a huge kind of a quantum step. And so first question is just give me a little bit of philosophy about why you think that sort of the industry is ready to take that step. And secondly, I just want to confirm this is planned to be landed prior to the third human landing on the moon, probably Artemis 5, but it's just be for the third human mission. Is that right?
So I'll answer the second part. So again, under this contract, they have proposed their own mechanism for landing on the moon. So it is not really tied to the Artemis human missions. Our objective and our plan is to have an LTV on the surface prior to the Artemis 5 crew arrival. If they can get there earlier, we'll take it earlier. If it's there for the Artemis 4 crew, all the better. And certainly as soon as it's on the surface, it can start doing unmanned teleoperated science. So again, we're not fundamentally linked and tied to a specific Artemis mission necessarily. As far as whether they're up to the challenge, again, I mentioned we spent quite a bit of time gathering industry data through requests for information, trying to understand where we thought the state of the art was, what their capabilities were. I know we're asking a lot of these companies, but I think as you hear these gentlemen talk, I think they're up to the challenge, and we are certainly here to help them be successful.
Yeah, Eric, I would add a comment to that in terms of a burgeoning cislunar economy or commercial economy. If you dovetail this with the commercial lunar payload service contract, we now are set for an annual cadence of mission deliveries to the surface of the moon. We've had our first successful mission. We'll have another one this year and another one early next year probably. That sets up for that delivery. And building off of the core of that experience, we can continue to evolve the lander technology to the point where we can get a reliable delivery system called Nova-D, which takes 1,500 metric tons to the 1.5 metric tons to the surface in the South Pole. So delivery is there, right? And we'll be there building on what NASA's already done to instigate the commercial market. Now, the stressor requirement that Lara and her team put out about the 10-year survival can be solved in many, many different ways. And so thinking innovatively about how to do that, dovetailing that with a sparing strategy. Now, if you have a regular cadence of missions, you already have a commercialization plan where we're seeking commercial business to augment what the government anchor tenant is. And then you say, on top of that, I can deliver spares, I can deliver additional rovers, whatever it needs to survive that 10-year requirement. Versus, do I have to invent something brand new where every component, including bearings and suspension and batteries, survives 10 years? So some of that thinking's gone in and you just haven't seen in the proposals.
Yeah, and I agree with Steve wholeheartedly. I think because LTVS exists as a part of the Artemis ecosystem, we are able to leverage those other opportunities, whether it's part of the CLIPS program to prove out heritage on the surface of the moon, or whether it's to leverage high degrees of heritage of our partners and that testing that we can do here on the lunar surface that's going to happen as a part of these other programs as well. And that's something Apollo didn't have. When Apollo was putting the LRV on the lunar surface, it was the first time that rover was on the lunar surface. First time most of that technology was on the surface of the moon. So if we're able to test out not only the tires, which I mentioned earlier, Goodyear tires, in a vacuum here on Earth, but if we're able to put them on the surface of the moon understand exactly how they interact with that regolith and what that wear is going to be like over time, that provides us a lot more data and a lot more knowledge on how to meet these very difficult requirements that are a part of the LTVS program. So because of that Artemis ecosystem, that really allows us to have a much higher degree of confidence once we put this LTV on the lunar surface.
Yeah, and I would just like to commend NASA for your process here. Maybe people aren't aware, but the first request for information for this program came out in early 2020. There was another one in 2021, a draft RFP, et cetera. And we were engaged in that conversation all along, and NASA has really, I think, taken to heart the industry input, not just on the technological limitations and the requirements, but on the commercial constraints that we're operating under and allowing for commercial activity on these missions. So really appreciate that. We have a similar strategy where, you know, we've already signed an agreement to go to the moon in 2026 to prove out our commercial model, and we've last year announced a number of companies who have signed up to go with us on that mission. And that mission, of course, will be a precursor to LTVS and allow us to learn and improve the system before it serves the Artemis campaign.
Yeah, and I'll add a little bit about your point about the harshness of the environment. There are some areas in the polar regions that are extremely harsh. There are permanent shadows where we never see sunlight. But there are other aspects to the South Pole that we understand because of the observations we've made over the last several decades. We've had the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter looking at the moon since 2009. We've learned a tremendous amount. And so I think we need to be careful when we talk about the South Pole as being harsher than elsewhere on the moon. There are some aspects, and the reason we're going to the South Pole is that there are some attributes that make it a little bit easier. So we often hear talking about surviving the day. Well, a lunar day in the South Pole can be hundreds of Earth days, depending on where you go. That's the knowledge that we have learned over the last several decades that really enables us to take advantage of the lunar environment to our benefit. That data helped us develop requirements. It's the same data that's available to all of our teams to also determine how they want to go about this. And I thank them for bringing their innovation and creativity to this. That's why we're approaching this the way we are. We want to hear these different solution sets so that we can take advantage of the moon. So instead of viewing the moon as a harsh environment that's difficult, I would suggest that maybe we view the advantages we can use to our benefit at the polar region. Again, that lighting, it can be hard if you go into the dark places, but it can be easier if we are taking advantage of places with longer access to light. And so I think with the knowledge we have gained, the knowledge that's available to them, you know, I'm confident in what we can do moving forward.
All right, thank you, Jake. We'll take another question here in the room.
Hi again, thank you. So with the understanding that we're early in the design phase, many features may be subject to change. You know, maybe you don't want to show all your cards just yet. But if you could, you know, what newer innovative capabilities is each provider most excited about providing with their design? And how do you see that, you know, helping your vehicle contributing to that sustainable lunar presence in the long term? Thank you.
I didn't hear the whole question. Go ahead, jump in if you did.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So what capability are you most excited about providing that may be new or innovative or different, if you can share? And how do you see your design contributing to that sustainable presence in the long term?
For me, I'll lead off and have my fellow awardees talk. But, you know, I have a strategy in Intuitive Machines where we don't necessarily aggregate all the risk into a single launch. So by providing components at a certain size in an economy, you can actually make more progress along the way. So like I talked with Eric's question about an annual cadence of missions, we can talk about resupply, we can talk about delivery of components and delivery of systems that feed the broader ecosystem or the broader economy. So if you have an SLS or a Starship launch to the surface, you tend to aggregate risk in that one vehicle. In this case, what we do is build a cargo variant, like your regional delivery in aircraft or your Amazon regional vans that deliver packages to your house. A tractor trailer doesn't pull up to your house and deliver your package. A regional van does. And so taking that regional delivery approach and architecture means that we've lowered the risk for NASA, we've lowered the cost of access to the lunar surface, and we've actually allowed more participants in the lunar economy. And that's what I'm most proud of.
Yeah, so I think the aspect of our design that I'm most excited about, and it's in the name, Flex, is we have a novel modular payload capability, and that allows us to change out different cargo, different implements, different customers, and serve a multitude of use cases, again, to really serve as a catalyst for the lunar economy. You know, the lunar surface is going to need not just rovers, it's going to need power generation, power distribution, landing pads, berms, roads, habitation, et cetera. And we're developing a platform that can support all of those use cases as we go forward. Prior to starting Astrolab, I worked at SpaceX and worked on Starship, and really got excited about that capability and just the sheer tonnage that we'll soon be able to bring to the lunar surface, not only with Starship, but the other CLIPS landers and the other HLS landers in work. And so soon, access to the lunar surface is going to transition from, once a decade, a few tens of kilograms to, once a month, hopefully, with hundreds of tons. And so we're at a point in history now where you can actually start to contemplate industrial scale activity happening at the lunar South Pole, and we're trying to build the platform to support it.
And I'll chime in. I think my fellow awardees spoke pretty awesomely about the opportunity that's ahead of us if we do this right. To talk to your question about technologies that we're most excited about, I mentioned the batteries earlier. I think that's a critically important part to solve as part of the whole Artemis ecosystem, not just the LTVS program. So we're very excited about those. Those are coming from GM. I talked about the tires, but two of them that I didn't mention, and these are actually quite cool, and these are driven by the requirements that NASA provided. One requirement we have is we can't have more than 10 meters error on the lunar surface at any given time. This is without any infrastructure in place. We don't have GPS satellites around the moon. We don't have communication infrastructure. And we have to understand our environment and understand our vehicle dynamics to a point that we know exactly where we are on the lunar surface. And now that's not only critical for astronaut safety, but that is going to be a pretty awesome technology that I think we can bring back here to Earth that hopefully helps drive the adoption of autonomous cars in the future, that helps drive forward self-driving cars and vehicles, not only on the roads, but in some of these unconstrained and undefined environments. So that's the third. The fourth is remote operations. Now, this is something that's been a pretty difficult problem to solve in the mining and the resources industry more broadly. Remote operations during that teleoperation phase of the LTVS program has to be pretty clean, right? You can't be dropping frames, you can't be dropping packets. You have to be able to operate this vehicle with confidence, because this is, a pretty expensive asset on the surface of the moon, but at the same time, it's pretty critical to all of our commercial business plans to have this operating for years at a time on the lunar surface. So you don't want to hit a rock, right? That's not something you want to do. So you have to be able to operate in a way that provides that situational awareness remotely driving here on Earth, or be able to operate autonomously on the surface of the moon. One thing cool that Lunar Outpost just did last week is remotely operate the Australian Trailblazer rover from here in the United States. That was actually from our Colorado offices, which we were extraordinarily excited about. So we're starting to take bites off of those critical technologies that need to be a part of this LTVS program before we've even really gotten started here. But I do applaud the NASA team for putting these requirements in place to help push forward the cutting edge technology, because there's a lot of cool tech coming out of this. Awesome.
All right, thank you. We'll now go to our phone bridge with Will Robinson Smith of Spaceflight Now.
Yes, hi. Thanks for taking our questions today. Really appreciate it. Question for Lara Kearney, if I may. I believe Toyota is also developing its own human version of a lunar cruiser rover. So I was curious was that factored into the award decision today, or is that operating on a completely separate contract that'll eventually weave into the Artemis program down the road, so to speak? Thanks.
Yeah, I believe you broke up just a bit at the beginning. I believe you asked about Toyota and the lunar cruiser. Is that what I heard you say?
It was, yes.
Okay. Yes, again, kind of back to where I started. Again, we have within the scope of my program both this unpressurized rover, which the LTV is, and the pressurized rover. And the lunar cruiser that you see, if you go Google it on the internet here with Toyota, is a pressurized vehicle. Both of those assets we are managing within my program. The idea is that they work together as a part of, again, a lunar system to support the crew. Where the LTV is unpressurized, it will likely be more limited in its range. A pressurized rover, when it comes along with the life support, will be able to extend the crew's range even farther away from a lander. So our concept is that the unpressurized LTV and the pressurized vehicle work together in some type of operational concept to support the crews and the scientific missions. I'm probably going to leave it at that. I would just mention we do have an announcement about a week from now related to the pressurized rover. So we'll be able to talk to you a little bit more about that in about a week or so.
All right, thank you. We'll take our next question from Marcia Smith with spacepolicyonline.com.
Thanks so much for taking my question. It's for Laura. The press release says that the combined maximum potential value of this is $4.6 billion. Could you talk about the time frame that covers? Is that between now and 2029 when you expect Artemis 5 to land? Because that's sort of like when you're thinking of the first one will land. And how much of that is for this initial 1 year part of the effort?
Yes, so the life of the contract, I'm gonna quote it, and I'm hoping I'm gonna get it right. I'm gonna look right at my source board chair, but so we set it's quite a long contract. It's up to 15 years, and it is based on a 5-year development plus the 10-year operating phase that we've been talking about. So that contract value number that you see covers the entire contract scope over 15 years. And don't confuse contract value necessarily with budget. It's just a number that is on this contract that we are authorized to put these task orders out up to as objectives come on, and we want potentially to bring new task orders onto this contract. So the feasibility phase that is up front is only a small fraction, I would say, of the overall cost. It's, again, all of these companies have prototypes that they already have in place and that they're working. The first feasibility phase is really about, paper products and making sure we can get to a place where NASA can understand how well they are meeting our requirements. So the first phase is really not a significant overall piece of that cost. The demonstration phase is quite a big chunk, and then, of course, 10 years of operating services as well. So I think hopefully that answered your question.
All right, thank you, Laura. We'll now go to Jim Siegel with Florida Media Now.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for taking my question. I was actually going to ask a little bit about the pressurized system, so you've already answered that, Laura, but I did want to know from each one of the three awardees, relatively how many people are going to be working on this project for each one of your organizations? Are we talking about 10 or 15 or 500 or what? Could you speculate on what that might be? Thank you.
Well, I would say this first phase is significantly limited, as Lara indicated, where it's really a feasibility of design and design maturation to preliminary design review. And so the way we strategized about that, we are certainly going to use all the team members to bring their talents to bear. And with half a dozen team members, the numbers can climb pretty quickly. However, it's important that we manage that team size effectively in the beginning and really understand, how we're meeting requirements and how we're meeting the safety needs and the reliability needs of what NASA asked us before the team ramps up into the full development cycle. So you'll see a bell curve kind of shape in our manpower where we'll start out with a small team, and then once we get into the full-scale development for the demonstration mission, should we be fortunate enough to win that, we will ramp up significantly to deliver that system.
Awesome. Yeah, happy to chime in. So our company, about 85 folks. We have 100 that we're going to be at the end of next quarter. But I will say we have the benefit of having truly amazing partners in Lockheed Martin, General Motors, Goodyear, MDA Space, and each one of those companies is a multi-billion-dollar company that can throw serious resources at this. I will say, although our team is 85 people, we're 85 people that focus solely on mobility, robotic systems, for space and extreme environments. So we're throwing our entire team at this, everything we have, and we will be bringing on more A+ talent. So just a quick plug, if you want a job, shoot us your resume. We're always looking for really awesome people here in Houston and also in Denver, Colorado.
Yeah, we're a similar scale to Lunar Outpost, and of course we also have partners as well, Axiom Space and Odyssey Space Research. So, in aggregate, there'll be certainly in excess of 100 in the first year working on this. This is our sole focus of our company. We are developing our commercial platform regardless. So. We're all in on this solution, and so it's similar to as you said. If we're awarded the demonstration mission, that will drive some growth as well. But this is our entire focus, and we look forward to working closely with NASA and providing essentially that focus to this problem.
All right, thank you, Jarrett. We're going to go to our last question on the phone bridge with Ryan Catton of NASA Spaceflight Now.
Thank you. I'm interested in the remote/autonomous operations that were mentioned. Is that going to be purely for moving the vehicle between different landing sites? Or will they be able to host science payloads? And if they can host science payloads, are they going to be able to be interchangeable by astronauts? Is it going to be more, or are they going to be permanently fixed to thinking of the Mars rovers that we currently have? Thank you.
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. And the expectation is that we'll be able to host scientific payloads on the LTV, and that we could use those payloads to conduct scientific research between the time periods that the astronauts are there. Your question was focused on the telerobotic phase. So the goal is to be able to conduct research with astronauts, move astronauts around, help them get to locations they wouldn't otherwise be able to reach, and then to conduct continued exploration and science after they've departed. So the payloads, we don't know what they are yet. We'll be working with our directorates across NASA to identify that. But the rovers themselves, and anybody else can chime in here, are likely to have a suite of sensors to help with a lot of that telerobotic activity. So they really will be exploring, and that really goes hand in hand with science. It's collecting knowledge. It's learning about the environment. They'll conduct reconnaissance so that we know better how to move around in the future. You've heard them hinting about this, that's iterative build and steps to learn how to do this work. And the science knowledge is kind of a backbone that we have. And we talked earlier about the environment and how much we've learned about the environment over the last several decades. And this is just a continuation of that effort to continue learning. And the capabilities that we've requested for the vehicles are to be able to host those payloads and support the astronauts when they're there.
Yeah, with our terrestrial prototype, we've actually also built a 2.5 meter long 6 degree of freedom robotic arm with a modular end effector. And that's allowed us over the last couple of years to practice doing science operations, deploying instruments, collecting samples, deploying infrastructure. And we do that routinely. We do it remotely as well, operating from our Mission Control Center in Hawthorne, California. And so we're already on that path to really get the most out of these vehicles in order to enhance the science return of the Artemis campaign.
Yeah. Oh, you gonna go soon? All right, happy to jump in. I think obviously the coolest thing about the LTVS program is its contribution to the broader Artemis campaign, providing mobility for astronauts on the lunar surface, and that's number one. What's really exciting, though, is there are multiple other goals and objectives that we can solve with this platform, with this LTV, that are incredibly important to the sustainability of the new cislunar economy, whether it's building infrastructure on the moon, whether it's prospecting and sampling resources, or whether it's performing these enhanced science mission objectives that the NASA folks were just talking about. It really is a truly capable vehicle, and I'm really excited to see what this vehicle is going to do on the lunar surface.
All right, thank you so much. That is all the time we have for today. Thank you once again to all of our briefers for their time, and congratulations again to Intuitive Machines, Lunar Outpost, and Astrolab. We do hope that you will continue to follow along with NASA's Artemis campaign at nasa.gov/Artemis. That will wrap up today's briefing. We'll see you next time.